In many aspects, World War I is eerily similar to the geopolitical alliances that we have today. And unlike World War II, all alliances of World War I were trans-ideological. For example, Germany and the Ottoman Empire were allied purely because they had the same enemies. Germany wanted to weaken Russia because Russia was allied with France, and the Ottoman Empire wanted to control the Black Sea. But in World War II, communists and fascists, despite being in a temporary alliance, still saw themselves as being on a crusade against evil. And one other important difference is that in World War I, all countries wanted to make the case to their own people and to the people of the world that their side is actually the victim, that the other side attacked them. While Hitler, while he did make the absurd claim that Poland attacked him, nobody, not even in Germany, took that claim seriously. So World War I is actually a war in which nobody wanted a global war, unlike Hitler, that actually did want a global war, or at least did not care if the global war occurred. And if we are talking about his attack on the Soviet Union, then he definitely did want a global war. While in World War I, we are talking about a very unstable network of alliances that even gave a lot of power to smaller countries like Serbia. And the entire world was actually plunged into war despite nobody actually wanting such a large war, which is why Christopher Clark rightfully makes the case in his book Sleepwalkers that World War I is actually eerily similar to the geopolitical situation today, where no country actually wants war in the same way in which Hitler and the Japanese wanted a large-scale war. Many countries just wanted a mini war, like Serbia or Austro-Hungary actually just wanted to conquer Serbia. But I'll explain why this complex network of alliances actually ended up causing a world war. And also the Cold War seems to be this anomalous period if we compare it to the situation today and situation before World War I. Because very rarely in history did we have two superpowers almost completely controlling their allies. Of course, the Sino-Soviet split did happen, and the Americans were not always on good terms with the French, but generally both superpowers could control their allies. While in World War I, no such control existed. And of course, there are some other causes to World War I that have nothing to do with this complex geopolitical situation in the Balkans. For example, colonialism. All great powers wanted to expand their colonial spheres of influence, and Germany wanted to take colonies from France and Britain, but it still remains the case that World War I actually did start with an act of terrorism, which is what makes this war so eerily similar to wars we have today. What is today Muslim terrorism, back in the day was extreme nationalist terrorism, especially terrorism of the Black Hand, a secret Serbian organization that also glorified suicide. And Gavrilo Princip, the guy that shot the Franz Ferdinand, actually was inspired by Bogdan Žerac, a man that failed to kill the Austro-Hungarian regent of Bosnia and Herzegovina, but he refused to be captured by Austrian police and he shot himself in the head. So this same fanaticism that is seen today in, for example, Hamas, was back then present in the organization, the Black Hand. But now I want to explain to you the geopolitical situation in the Balkans that led to the World War. It all starts with a very violent event that happened in the Kingdom of Serbia. The dynasty of Obrenović is replaced with the dynasty of Karađorđević in 1903, and it was a violent event that pretty much shocked the world. Sure, you can see the king and his lover being brutally thrown from the terrace, and the Serbian military officers that in the future were to be the essence of this terrorist organization, the Black Hand, were behind this very brutal coup. The queen's hand was cut off and thrown from the terrace as well, and both bodies were shot multiple times. And that hatred that existed towards the inefficient king was actually largely justified. He was just very incompetent and had this weird habit of suspending the Serbian constitution. But why is this important? Because in the eyes of the global investors, Serbia suddenly became a very unstable place, which is why nobody wanted to invest into Serbia. And Serbia remained a very rural country, and like in the American Wild West, if you are a rural country that has a huge surge in the population, which is what many other European countries were also experiencing in the early 20th century and what the United States was experiencing throughout the 19th century, this leads to the expansionist policy, and that is why this idea of Greater Serbia became so popular, not only with the Serbian military elites but also with small peasants in Serbia. And what needs to be said is that this idea of Greater Serbia in a different universe, it did not have to go in the direction of Bosnia and Austro-Hungary, but the economic war that existed between Austro-Hungary and Serbia led Serbian elites to conclude that expansion towards Bosnia is the best thing they could do. So the Serbian king actually decided that it is not good for the Serbian economy to be dependent on Austro-Hungary, which is why he decided to buy French weapons instead of buying Austro-Hungarian weapons. And Austro-Hungary responded by waging economic war on Serbia. This is called the Pig War in literature. They refused to buy Serbian pigs, and they also annexed Bosnia and Herzegovina, a place that was under the occupation of Austro-Hungary but was never controlled, was never annexed by Austro-Hungary until 1908. And in Serbia, this was a huge deal. They almost started a war because of it. But Russia at this time replied that they are not ready. They are not ready to fight on the side of Serbia, because at this point the Russian Empire was trying to balance between being allied with Bulgaria and Serbia. They were trying to be seen as protectors of all Orthodox Slavs in the Balkans. But as the Balkan Wars happened, Serbia became much stronger, and Bulgaria discredited itself by attacking its neighbors and losing in the Second Balkan War, which is why Russia became much more pro-Serbian, the Russian Empire that is. And after the Second Balkan War, Serbia knew that Russia would probably join the war on their side if they can make a reasonable case that they were attacked, which was also important for Austro-Hungary, because Germany claimed that they will join Austro-Hungary if they can make a reasonable case that they had no other choice. And that is actually what's so weird about World War I. The situation was morally grey enough for both sides to make the case that they were actually attacked. And now, did Pasic, the Prime Minister of Serbia, one could say he was truly the most powerful man in Serbia at the time, but he was also limited by the king and by the military elites. Did Pasic want war in 1914? Well, according to Christopher Clark, actually no, because Serbia still hadn't consolidated all the territories that were conquered in the Second Balkan War. And Pasic even ordered the generals to give the territories to the civilian government, but they refused, and the military coup almost happened against Pasic, which is why he did not want to go to war at that exact time when the war actually started. But the people in the terrorist organization, the Black Hand, they actually did want war. And what's interesting is that Christopher Clark brings us the psychological profile of Gavrilo Princip, a young, kind of asocial Serbian man that instead of spending a lot of times with his friends, he used his free time in order to memorize Serbian epic songs about fighting against the Ottoman Empire, and he saw himself as a hero from these ancient times, as the new Miloš Obilić, that now instead of killing the Sultan will kill an evil Christian emperor that's oppressing Bosnian Serbs. And also, instead of pursuing women, he showed zero interest in women, although we have no reason to believe that he was gay. But instead of going to bars and trying to get women, he would spend his nights on the grave of the failed Serbian assassin Bogdan Đerić, who committed suicide instead of being captured by the Austro-Hungarian authorities. Gavrilo Princip saw him as a hero, and he would spend entire nights on his grave thinking about oppression of Serbs in Bosnia, which, according to Christopher Clark, was from an economic perspective actually a myth. They had a higher standard of living than Serbs in Serbia, but the Austro-Hungarian government still kept the Muslims as the feudal caste in charge of the Christian peasants, which is why Serbs still were actually oppressed. And Gavrilo Princip is still seen by many as a hero, but he actually does remind me of men that do terrorist acts today. He was kind of asocial, very unpopular, did not have a girlfriend, and he had dreams of being remembered by history as a hero, which, well, he actually, one could say, succeeded, at least partially. Many people do see him as a hero, as you can see on this picture. But if I had to describe the relationship between the Black Hand and the Serbian government, I think we can draw a parallel between Iran and Hamas. Why is that? Because without the support of Iran, Hamas would cease to exist. But to say that Iranians can absolutely control everything that Hamas does is simply not the case. In the same way, Pasic was actually trying to prevent the assassination attempt. He even warned, actually, we have reason to believe, although this is still a bit enigmatic and an open question in history, but yes, he did warn the Austro-Hungarian authorities that an assassination attempt might take place, but they did not take him seriously because he was not clear enough, because he did not want to be seen as a traitor by the Serbian people. But he could make a convincing case after the assassination happened that he did not know about the assassination, which is what he actually did claim. He was lying, of course, so the best defense, if I had to defend Nikola Pasic, the Serbian prime minister, would actually be that he did warn his enemies, but he simply claimed that he had zero knowledge about the assassination attempt. And actually, Serbia and Pasic had a point. Nobody could prove to them that they knew about the assassination attempt, which is why they could argue that it was very reasonable for them to refuse the ultimatum that was given to them by Austro-Hungary, while on the other hand, Austro-Hungary could make the case that it is simply not realistic that Serbia did not know about the assassination. And precisely because the situation was so morally gray and so complicated, it was the perfect trigger for World War I. Without such an event, maybe the great powers would decide not to go to war with each other, because without the situation being so morally gray, they could not make the case that both sides are actually victims at the same time, which is what makes World War One so interesting. Okay, don't forget to like, share and subscribe if you liked this video.